Hey everybody, I'm back with another game review from the ChessGoals Repertoire. This time looking at the King's Indian defense from the white side. And I've been struggling with this opening a bit lately because I guess just maybe I'm getting too excited about these king side attacks and I let my opponents get some counterplay. So I took a game that I lost and I looked at it pretty deeply and ended up discarding the game because the way I played it was sort of dumb and really found some much better and more interesting ways to handle the position that I wanted to show here. So I paused at this point in the opening because I wanted to point out that I made a move order goof when I played. The actual repertoire is supposed to be g4. I played knight ge2. Now, luckily, we transposed immediately back, so I didn't end up getting a unique position. But so we played d5 here. We want to close things down. And c6, g4, as usual. C takes, we always take back with the pawn. And then queen a5, which is a new sort of idea that we haven't actually, isn't really covered in the repertoire. But it's clear what Black's idea is. He's pinning this pawn, and he's trying to put additional pressure here against the pawn on e4. And I'm going to bring in the second knight with even more pressure. So we go knight g3. And then, of course, knight c5. And we have kind of a choice here. I spent some time thinking about this and trying to figure out what the best way to handle this is. My instinct said I wanted to play f3 because I really kind of like this move often in this opening because it cements this c4 pawn, it cements this pawn. I can play queen d2 later and slide across. There's a lot of good things, but this move also is a bit committing because often Black will play this f5 maneuver and this line will come open, and the pawn is a little bit weak here on the the pawn's a little bit weak right here on f3 because it's not defended by the king. So the other option, the other idea was to play queen b1, and the idea is to defend this way. Now we don't like queen c2 as much because we want to threaten this idea of a fork, which is going to be an important idea later in the game. But I didn't like this idea because it seemed like my queen is going to be a little offsides. And it turns out I did find a game in the database that after that queen b1 was played, and Black followed up with takes, takes, and then they took here on d5. And this is a complicated position. The game ended up going bishop d2, knight f4. White did win this game. He has a piece, but this is complicated, weird. It's not really thematic for the opening that we're trying to play. And so all of that together, I decided I liked f3. And I think that this is the right way to go for the repertoire, right way to handle the position. He played bishop to d7, which I didn't immediately understand what he was doing. I just thought he was making a developing move. But actually, he has a pretty clear point. I've cemented this pawn as much as I possibly can, but that he can switch his focus here to the c3 knight, which is a bit unstable. This bishop d7 is going to allow knight a4. It's going to allow the rook to come to c8. And I'm going to end up with some pressure here. And it's totally misunderstood this idea entirely. In the game, I decided to carry on with, excuse me, not rook b1, which is the way I think we should handle this, but I played g5. And because I thought that, woohoo, I've kicked his knight back to a weird place, and I continued on with things. And it wasn't that much longer before I was getting smashed over here on the queen side. So going back, I looked at rook b1 as the sort of ideal move. And the idea is that he didn't take the time to play a5, which is what they do in a lot of lines. And when that happens, we get this opportunity to kick the knight. And we really want to do that. If we can get rid of that knight, that seems to make everything much, much easier and stable on the queen side. And we can quickly go back to a regularly scheduled queen side attack. Or sorry, king side. I did look at like maybe playing a3 to support it, but it's a bit wild. We get like bishop a4, and if we try b4 now, we get this kind of craziness, which this is, well, it's just bad for us. So rook b1 is the way to go because it doesn't weaken the light squares as much, and we're just going to push b4, we're going to kick this queen out, and we're going to go about our business. Now, the only way to prevent that is to go knight a4 immediately. But this is what's great. We go we go pawn pushes and takes our queen, of course. We get back with the king. And this is a really nice, interesting position because we have pressure against the against the b7 pawn. It's not easy for him to play b6 and liquidate it. Both our bishops are playing very nicely. We can quickly bring our knight over. Our rook can lift and come across. Our king is ready to go. Everything is all ready to help and fight on the queen side. Whereas this knight, this rook, and this bishop and this knight, they're not in the game, and this bishop especially is not going to be there for a while, nor is the king. So we're effectively playing up quite a bit of material on the queen side, and it's going to take quite some time, and we have a weakness. So rook fb8, forced almost. We can play g5 just to solidify these dark squares and make sure that this bishop really has a long time before it can get out and becomes useful. We can go, so we're going to play knight e8, bishop b5. We're happy to trade off one of his lone pieces while helping. After we play king to2, we will have connected our rooks automatically. And bishop to b5. And rook takes. And then I like this idea where they throw in f5 just so that we're not worried about it. We don't want to take. This pawn is doing great. We're not worried about f4. We're just going to push. And we'll just play knight e2. And if they make a natural move like b6, trying to liquidate, well, no big deal. We just take, he takes back, we play knight c3 to defend here, and the game's going to continue, maybe something like rook a6, defending the pawn, we move the king up, bishop f8, trying to come across, we bring our other rook in, he struggles to bring the bishop in, we can bring our pawn up, and then say something like f4, he's going to try to win a pawn, no big deal, we got bishop takes. He takes here, we just drop right back, and this pawn extra, with all of our pieces and activity on that side, we're almost certainly gonna win. He tries not to trade rooks, doesn't matter, we can force the rook trade, thanks to this knight here. Going back, instead of b6 immediately, which I thought was pretty natural, knight c7 is an interesting move. After knight c7, we get like rook b3, and if he tries to play b5 now, he can get away with it, or b6, either way. I mean, b6, he could. b5 is better. These can transpose if we try to take en passant. And the point is that after takes, we play knight c3 this time to attack the pawn. We can't actually take it because he can play b5. And it looks like we can take it, but we'll lose this. And if we trade these two pawns, we're probably still a bit better, but it's not the same. We have this d6 pawn. But with a position like this, we're still a bit better, even with best play for the same reasons. We've got good pressure in this pawn. We can bring up, come across, and get similar play to what we were just looking at before. Now, going back, I actually did skip over something quite nice, some nice ideas I looked at. So when I was looking at this bishop d7, I told you I thought it was just natural development. And so I started looking at maybe some other ideas of what if he had just made natural development and left this alone and didn't go for this knight a4 idea and just played something like knight d7, maybe he was going to come here. But we still want to play this rook b1. This solidifying and like making things solid on the king side is really an important idea when they get this knight to c5 and you can play b4. So this time he's really got nothing better than to get the king out because he doesn't have a4 at all now. He's just going to lose whatever we put there. That was the whole point of the bishop. And we drop back, we kick it out, and notice how awkward it is. Because either way he brought his pieces back was going to feel a bit awkward if he tries to go for this typical plan, which is never going to work. We go h4, and bishop f6 was just a cool line I saw from the computer. So if bishop f6 going after this pawn, we can happily just let him have it. We come across, now he's forced to take. And with no bishop, these squares are super, super weak. It's really tough for black to even hold on. He's got this weakness. His queen side is also not doing too great. Our bishops look great. We have the file. We're super happy to get rid of this pawn. He basically, to stay in the game, has to find f6, and after something like knight b5, just attacking the pawn, he's forced to come back here. We can put pressure against the pawn this way, and we're actually have a nice little threat here. So captures, we can just take this, and we're going to win our pawn back. We still have all of these weaknesses, even if he had the f6. This is a great position to be in. Instead of bishop f6, which maybe is hard to find, say you play something like knight c7, just trying to bring the pieces back. This is another nice one to look at. Queen d2, seeing some attacking ideas. Say knight b6, just opening his bishop. We can go h5, bishop d7, and again the same idea. f6 is a common idea. They want their king to escape, and I just looked at just wanted to show you guys some nice little attacking motifs here. Just captures, and we can take across, and I love this rook b2, just making full use of the second rank, and we come to a pretty quick end. We're just going to open things up. I just looked at one possible way to go, trying to trade queens, not going to allow it. Come across, and now just going to try to open things up even further. We capture here. He can trade queens if he wants, but it's going to cost him the piece anyway, because after trades queens, we take with the rook. He takes with the king here because he can't with the bishop, and then we have a fork. We have a similar motif in this line. After takes, we give a rook check, push the king away. We play here. He trades, and we take advantage of the pen. We're going to win a piece again also. So similar idea, but I wanted to go back to this kind of key position. The takeaway, what we should be thinking about is after this move, bishop to d7, and with this knight here on c5, that once we've solidified this e4 point, that we really take actions to get rid of this knight. You can get in a lot of trouble by just trying to let all of these pieces hang out, and you can get a lot of pressure against this c3. And notice our king here is a little bit shaky, so taking control of the queen side before you start going on your king side action is an important idea, and something that I hope you guys can take away and that I try to implement in my future games going forward. Thanks a lot. Bye.